Come in, Southern California. This is Radio Free Los Angeles. Do you copy? Repeat, do you copy?
Now transmitting from behind the Iron Curtain in the People's Republic of California, we bring you the voice of free men, free markets, and limited constitutional government. Welcome to citizen-sponsored Radio Free Los Angeles with President of the California Taxpayers Union, Mike Alexander, and editor of the Taxpayer Gazette, Jonathan Wilson.
All right, back with you here, everybody. Welcome to Radio Free Los Angeles. This is Mike Alexander, president of School Choice 2020, as well as the California Taxpayers Union, and most importantly, the host here of Radio Free Los Angeles. We're going to have by myself tonight. It's that time of the year. It's vacation time, and Josh Jacobs is off, and so is Jonathan Wilson. So if you guys are listening out there anywhere, particularly you, Jonathan, there in the low country of South Carolina, I hope you're enjoying your time with your family, and we look forward to having you back next week. If you'd like to be part of our program, be sure to call us here at 866-870-5752. That, of course, is KRLA 870 here. And if you'd like to be part of the citizen-supported radio here, be sure to go to radiofreelosangeles.net and click the donate button. That'll probably take you over to School Choice 2020, and be sure to be part of this. We're going to talk more about political support here later on. All right, now we got a great program for you here this evening. Some very, very interesting things that have come to my attention, and there's so much to cover on the local side. As you guys know out there, everybody covers the national issues, and there's so many great hosts, great programs that cover these national issues so very, very well. The mission of this program is to cover the other half of the $8 trillion, almost $9 trillion worth of spending in the United States. And here on Radio Free Los Angeles, we want to talk about local spending, particularly here in California. We think that you can understand a lot more about government and how it operates by also understanding the other half of government spending. And when you understand how much is spent at the local level, which is another $4 trillion, on top of the $4.5 or more trillion dollars being spent by the federal government, you can start to get some idea of the scope of government. And when you further understand that all the money spent at the local level is designed to create and maintain political power, which reaches right from here in Glendale or Pasadena or up in Del Norte County, wherever you are, that local power, political power generated by the public employee unions and the party that it works with most, the Democrat Party, although there's plenty of Republicans cooperating with this nonsense as well. That power is then projected to a state level and then on to the federal level. There is, in effect, no such thing as local politics. There is a local dimension, but believe me, it's vertically and horizontally integrated, and this enterprise, which has taken over complete control of our lives and our property and our futures, is out of control. And you know, there's no better example of being out of control than a recent proposal by one of our public leaders. It's right here in my stack here. For some reason or another, I'm having trouble finding it. Yes, there. This is our new thief-in-chief candidate. Of course, the real thief-in-chief here in this state is Gavin Newsom here, but we have a fellow here who is auditioning to be on the A team. And this guy would be a crook, state senator crook here, Senator Scott Wiener, Wiener. Don't know if he's related to the other one. They used to be married to Uma Abedin, Hillary Clinton's right hand, man or woo man, whatever you want to call her. But anyway, this idiot has introduced a bill, Senate Bill 378. And basically what it does is create California's own estate tax. Now, all of you of a certain age will want to pay close attention to this because you have not seen the last of this. This proposal here would, here, let me start with this. Here in California, we do not have an estate tax. If you die, your estate will pay only the federal estate tax. Now, that's bad enough, but right now the individual estate exemption, it's about $11,400,000, or twice that, $22.8 million if it's a couple. At the death of the latter of the two, is exempt from federal taxation. So what the state has decided to do is to jump into the gap where we used to have federal tax, but we no longer have federal tax. Once upon a time, here back in the 90s, I think the estate tax was as low, or the threshold for the imposition of the estate tax at the federal level was as low as $600,000. It got gradually moved up, and now it's indexed for inflation, and the numbers are going up each year. Well, as a result of boosting that estate tax exemption, it has left a gap in the opinion of the taxers and spenders, and that gap is intended to be covered by this thief here, Wiener. So Wiener wants to impose a 40% estate tax on the gap, and that would be, you'd have a $3.5 million exemption, and then it would tax 40% of your estate up to the next federal level, next federal minimum. So somewhere in between there, if you had say a $10 million net taxable state, the state of California would be picking up $4 million on that. That's what they're trying to do. So excuse me for stumbling here a little bit because I was reading the numbers. But in any event, that's their proposal. So it basically mean that in some parts of town, you might be able to keep your house and sell it, but everything else the state's going to take 40% of because there just aren't that many people with over $11.5 million per person, or $22 million. So the state of California is going to get into the business. Now, it's not clear how much this is going to generate here, because the taxpayers get a say. But what they're estimating here is that California will collect $500 million to $1 billion annually in estate taxes that it's not getting right now. So they say, well, look, it's just not as bad as it used to be. Well, it is. All you're doing is taking an unacceptable federal estate tax, which, by the way, should have been eliminated, and now they're substituting a state tax. And this is just absolutely outrageous. And what they're trying to do is just to engage in transfer of wealth. And what's interesting here is that I'm reading this idiot's press release from March 26, 2019. And the summary right at the top there is SB 378 replicates the federal estate tax but lowers the exemption to $3.5 million and directs collected taxes to a new fund, and get this, to a new fund to address and alleviate the wealth gap. Oh, yeah, okay, that makes great sense. Somebody's got some money left over, so you take it to redistribute it. There's always going to be a wealth gap. That's recorded in the Bible. The poor you always have with you. and these guys mean to make money on it. And, of course, all this money will first go into the hands of the government. Excuse me. All this money will first go into the hands of the government, so they'll just slice off a big part for themselves. They'll pay taxes. It'll go into a general fund or be easily and fungibly transferred back and forth between different government programs to permit them to pay themselves more money. And when you stop to think about the huge unfunded pension liability in this state, you get some idea of what they're doing and why they're doing it. Now, that is not the only tax on the horizon. There are two other proposals here that all of you need to know about. Oh, and by the way, because this proposed California estate tax increases what are known as transfer taxes, they will have to be approved by the people. So this would go on a ballot, and see if the average taxpayer is willing to tax his estate, or as more accurately, tax somebody else's estate. Now, can you imagine how many people are going to be selling and moving if this happens? This tax will not only not generate the money that it claims, it may have an absolutely adverse impact on whether executives come to this state or not. Now, there's another truly outrageous proposal out there on taxes, and that's one. Let me get over to these other guys. I hope I have it here, because it is really, really outrageous here. Here it is. And thank you, thank you, Steve Frank at California News and Political Views, and Carla Marinucci at Politico, who published the basic article first. And what this is a proposal that would also have to go on the 2020 state ballot, would be a proposal that would raise taxes on top earners and also corporations in this state to raise what they believe will be another $11 billion for schools. And schools are already getting record revenues here, but they come up with the same sad story. We'll talk more about that here as the show goes on. But basically what they're proposing, and this should come to you as no surprise that it's being hawked by the California School Board Association. It's an association of organized crime members out there. They're calling for a 1.5 percentage point tax increase on all personal income above $1 million, a move estimated to produce $3.5 billion annually for schools. But potentially more controversial is a provision for an additional 5 percentage point increase on corporate income over $1 million, which backers say would generate another $7.5 billion in revenue. And unlike the general tax increases, where the schools only, quote unquote, only get 40% of the revenue generated, this would be earmarked and would go 100% to K through 12, and 11% of that would go to the California community colleges. So everybody out there in that particular branch of organized government crime has agreed to step on this and get a piece of the action. Now, needless to say, that has alarmed a lot of the usually passive business groups in this state who somehow never seem to find a reason to oppose more funding for schools, despite the fact that there's no evidence that there's any connection at all between higher spending and better educational results. But the organizations here in the state, comprised of business people, are getting ready to fight two anti-business proposals here in the coming year. We can expect to see a proposal on the 2020 ballot for a split tax roll, which will require the amendment of Proposition 13, which historically has treated all property the same. So they want at that, and at the same time, they want to make it harder to hire chief executives. Here in the state of California, the price of business will go up, taxes on executives will go up, and the prices on homes will go up. And of course, they're going to start to experience revenue losses. Why should you have a corporate headquarters in the state of California when you can just simply move those headquarters to Texas or Nevada or to other very business-friendly states? So Gavin Newsom's here believes that just because everybody hasn't left and we're still the sixth largest economy in the world, everything's okay. Well, it's not. And this is another reason why that 140,000 people who pay 25% of California's taxes are going to find other reasons to leave. Now, we love to hear from you. I can't believe that you guys all love and agree with this stuff. And if you have an opinion or an insight, we love to hear from you. Our lines are wide open at 866-870-5752. So there are the two latest tax scams coming your way. If you manage to stay in this state, you pay an extra 1.5%. If you're a highly compensated individual, your corporation pays another 5 points. And if after all of that you manage to create some kind of an estate, well, you're going to be capped at $3.5 million. Then the government will take 40%. So they took 40 or 50% of your wealth before you're able to set it aside, and then after you finish, they're going to take another 40% of it. It's absolutely outrageous, and the question is, when do Californians, to be precise, when do they get tired of everything that's going on and decide to do something about it? We have to say no, and that begins with saying no to the public school monopoly, and we're going to talk a lot more about that here later on. You should know that this one tax scam, that is the one intended to raise the income tax on incomes over $1 million and raise the corporate tax in the state of California, that, of course, is being backed by a labor coalition called Schools and Communities First. And, of course, it's nothing but a bunch of public employee unions. And the public employee unions and the employees who are members of these unions and the government are all the same people. They're all working together. And their business is to grow government and to take the gun. And that's what government is, remember. It's the use of force to change human behavior. They're willing to use that gun and come and get more and more and more money from you, and it's never enough. Now, you would think that if they stole another, that is taxed, another 5, 10, or $50 billion from you, you would think that they would use it to pay down some of their debts. But no, they're sitting on a large surplus up there. They're trying to decide how to split it up, but they're always going to pay themselves more salary. They are never going to take all that money and do with it what they should, and that is just pay down the pension debt, because that would mean no more raises. So they always give themselves raises, which also increases the unfunded pension debt, because we can't get there from there. Now, speaking of pensions, we have a really interesting story that I came across here, and it's well, before I do that story, let me try to get a little conversation going with you here. This is another story linked by my good friend Steve Frank at California News and Political Views. And this one is from an article in the San Diego, they call it the Times of San Diego. And what's interesting down there is that there's been a lawsuit filed by, well, let's see here. Looks like we have a caller. Before I get started on that, let me try to take Nicole from Los Angeles, who was just called in. Nicole, how are you this evening?
Just fine, thank you. And I'm very appreciative to hear what you're saying this evening.
Oh, great.
Oh, yes. When I heard the name Scott Wiener, my skin froze.
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, this time because of taxes, we don't know what's in his computer, but it's probably more bad ideas. Nicole, by the way, for a free coupon at Pollo Loco, what senatorial district do you think the Scott Wiener represents?
Well, he's up in San Francisco.
Yeah. The first senatorial district, which is nothing but that San Francisco Peninsula, the city and county of San Francisco, right from the heart of insanity. Unbelievable.
Exactly. And we've been very aware of him for some time now because he has these bills that have morphed into SB 50 where they want to take local control away from municipalities and give Sacramento all the control.
Yes.
And I think that started out with SB 147 and 148, and that morphed into 50, and then there's a bunch of other ones. It's kind of like robocallers. They keep changing their numbers.
Yes.
And so he keeps changing the numbers of his bills and incorporates portions of these horrible things. He wants to eliminate single-family houses. They want to utilize underutilized land, which means land around single-family houses, backyards, and so forth. Put 8-story buildings in areas where there's, I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on, and it's just horrible.
Yes.
And now he's starting up with the taxes and estate taxes. I mean, it's enough to make you just really run to another planet. I mean, it's just... And the people don't realize it. And the idea of making another proposition with this on it, and then it'll be all the false advertising, and people say,
yes.
oh, yeah, well, let's take it. Well, what people don't realize, and also I'm trying to sort of incorporate two thoughts here with the Proposition 13. If they eliminate Proposition 13 from commercial buildings, then the rents will go up and up and up, and then the prices will go higher and higher and higher, those that will be rented. And the people who want to redistribute the wealth so badly will be paying a lot more for the things that they buy in the commercial building. I mean, it's just all so awful.
That's right.
I don't understand how this idiot gets so much power.
Yeah, which idiot? You mean all of them?
Well,
Well, this is it. This is the unending expansion of the government. And you sound to me, Nicole, like a woman of a certain age who's seen a lot of this rhetoric over the years from the times you were in school and growing up here in California. And we can remember when our Nicole, can you hang on through the break?
Yes, I will.
Yeah, hang on, because I'd like to continue this point. It's very important. This is Mike Alexander, Radio Free Los Angeles, and we're going to be back with you after the break. And please call in, become part of the show. It's a great evening to talk about what we're going to do to save our great state of California. Back with you in a minute.
Come in, Southern California. This is Radio Free Los Angeles. Do you copy? Repeat, do you copy?
Now transmitting from behind the Iron Curtain in the People's Republic of California, we bring you the voice of free men, free markets, and limited constitutional government. Welcome to citizen-sponsored Radio Free Los Angeles. with President of the California Taxpayers Union, Mike Alexander, and editor of the Taxpayer Gazette, Jonathan Wilson.
Good evening, everyone. Back with you here for the second half hour out of 3 half hours of Radio Free Los Angeles. This is Mike Alexander, and I'm so happy to be with you here this evening and to talk to all of our wonderful listeners. It's a great privilege to be here and to share with you the battle for California, which has been underway for years. Now, we're going to continue our conversation here with Nicole on line 1. Nicole, are you there, ma'am?
I am.
All right. As I start off, you sound like a lady who's been around for a while and has seen a lot. And you will recall, I'm sure, when we were all a bit younger, we had visions of socialism would somehow be imposed on us from outside our borders, that we were being threatened with nuclear weapons by Russia, and maybe to a certain extent by China, that somehow, some way, we were going to be overrun by these people, by a foreign invasion. But it turned out to be something different. And we always feared most that it would come from the federal government. But in fact, the greatest problem or expansion of socialism and of socialistic ideas, this idea of complete and total control, has come from state and local government, including especially the schools. And I was just wondering what your reaction is to that after all these years.
Well, I remember very far back exactly what you're saying. I remember bomb shelters.
Yes.
And never thought that communism would be proposed as some sort of positive change to every part of this country. And it seems to be stemming a great deal from California. And it's really very, very scary. I don't think, people love to think that they're going to get a big break if they vote for this negative publicity about the 1% and all this. But it's not the 1%. It's a lot of people.
Yes.
And the corporations are the ones that hire people.
Sure.
If we chase them out of California, who's going to be offering the jobs?
Right.
You can see how California will just go downhill. And I think that we have to start a positive campaign to show what this is really all about. Because this Scott Wiener and his followers are very dangerous, and they're going after one aspect after another, and nobody's stopping them.
Right. And one of the reasons why, maybe the major reason why, is because of the brainwashing and the indoctrination that takes place in K through 12, where our children are taken away from us, and worse yet, the children of others who have been brought here for the first time, know nothing of America, and are being taught a way of life and a view of America that is not only wrong, but completely hostile to you and to me, the people who overwhelmingly make life in California possible. They come from societies which have no tradition of private entrepreneurship, or not the same extent that we do. No culture of liberty, no culture of freedom, a culture, if anything, of dependency and poverty. They bring them here quite intentionally, and then we have to cope with all those problems, and we pay for the privilege.
Exactly.
Yeah. And what you pointed out there about the split roll, if it raises property taxes, that's going to raise the taxes on apartment buildings. That'll be an immediate pass-through of increased taxes in the form of increased rent. Business and commercial property will get passed through immediately, and your taco will cost you more. And all those small businessmen and women who don't make a heck of a lot of money, the gals in East LA that run sewing shops, body and fender shops, thousands of
all
small.
over. Yes.
Yeah, they're going to get hammered, and this is going to come right out of the pockets of the people that that are asked to believe that they're special, and that Democrats and people in government have special regard for them. Well, they don't. They're just there to exploit them and tax them as much as they can too. Yeah,
it's everybody.
Everybody. Yeah, and that's why we have so much in common with Latinos, with people who don't have very much money, with youngsters, and how about what we're doing to the next generation of students who are supposed to be graduating with degrees to get jobs. These jobs are not as plentiful or as compensatory or as remunerative as everybody thinks. And then on top of it, just about the time that they start to make it, even assuming they pay off their student debt, we're handing these same kids $1.5 trillion public pension deficit. They can't be paid, and it's going to drive up the cost of everything, even beyond what is being driven up to right now. And you know, Nicole, the terrible fact is that we talk about these things here on this program, and not one of these people will ever call in to walk you and me through it and tell us how we're wrong. I'd be happy if they could tell me we were wrong and we're going to get through all this and everything was going to be okay. Well, it's not.
And how we're going to get through it. You know,
yeah.
A lot of this started in the so-called movement and the revolution of the 60s.
Yeah.
And the young people who were rebelling and carrying on during that time vowed that the revolution would take place from within. And by golly, it has.
That's right. That's right.
Become college professors and this and that and the other thing.
We could do 10 shows just on the leftist and communist connections with so many people in state government. And I'm going to cover one such example here later in the show. Nicole, thank you for listening to the program out there. How long have you been listening?
I came upon you for the first time as I was driving just now this evening, and I was just stunned. I couldn't wait to hear the rest of what you had to say.
Well,
and to call you and talk to you, and I thank you very much for having conversation with me.
Well, you're very kind, Nicole. Thank you for listening to the program, and we're happy to have you as a member of the audience. And we look forward to speaking with you the next time. All right,
Absolutely.
Next up, we have a good friend. Where have you been, Brent? Did you go to summer camp in the Catskills? You haven't been on for a few weeks.
Yeah, almost. Yeah, hi, Mike. It was last week I was at Freedom Fest in Las Vegas.
Oh,
I camped there, and that was fascinating and interesting with 1,800 libertarians and conservatives and free-thinking people.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. Hey, since you were out there among libertarians, many we know that most Republicans are pro-Trump. We know there's a lot of Democrats who are pro-Trump. There are a lot of libertarians who were big never-Trumpers. So if you're out there at Freedom Fest with libertarians, it was probably an interesting cross-section. What was the temperature there about Trump's administration?
I think about 80% from what I was getting was pro-Trump.
Really?
But I think there were quite a few people on the other side, and it was kind of hard to read because a lot of the people were much quieter than in earlier years. And it's a very interesting group of people and a very interesting organization.
Right. Well, for many years I was a member of the Libertarian Party just because out of disgust. Let's say I've been a Republican for the last many years. I've always been a pro-life, pro-national defense libertarian, and I continue those same preferences inside the Republican Party. I think, like a lot of libertarians who have remained registered but probably vote for Trump, they and we, you and I, probably share a tremendous amount of concern about many of Trump's policies. We can support him, man, but that doesn't mean we stop thinking. We're very concerned, I know, about the deficit spending, both the fiscal debt, the unfunded liabilities. We're concerned about that here. We're concerned about the expansion of government. We're concerned about tariffs and how they're employed because they're a tax on the people. But at the same time, we look across the aisle, and I mean, we're looking at absolute, total, complete monsters. The communist state of the future and the communist Stalinist practices of the present. And I think it was one such practice or example that you wanted to discuss tonight.
Yeah, well, actually, you bummed me out with all this talk of tyranny and the wicked wild wieners.
Yeah.
And so I do think they are brothers. They're just brothers from different Marxist mothers.
Well said. Hey-oh.
But I had a sense this past week of some authentic hope relative to the Mueller situation. I see the hand and the humor of God playing in full view this week with the slapstick Mueller show. It was so surreal and so bizarre. It reminded me of a story from the Bible about the evil prophet Bilam, and how he was sent by the king of the Moabites to curse the Jewish nation. But when he went to try to curse them, it came out a blessing. And so it's one of those stories where he was bought off and he was paid to do a job to destroy goodness. And I think that's exactly what Mueller is all about. He was bought off, and he somehow was supposed to be the voice to curse Trump and America, and ended up not being able to do it and blessing us instead.
Looking at that madness this past week, I've heard all the comments on it, but this guy got up there and kept going. There's a reference that I've used many times on this show, referring back to Dinesh D'Souza's movie, Hillary's America. And in that program, he talks about having to go to jail on that phony campaign finance conviction he had. Yeah. Going to jail down there in San Diego and encountering some rather creative insurance fraud guys who would insure somebody's life, and then somehow, some way, the insured guy would end up dead, and they collect the money. Dinesh was fascinated by this guy and asked about what happened and how he came to be found out. And apparently his con had been discovered. And he said, well, what did you do then? Did you, confess to the police what they knew? And the con artist looked at Dinesh with mock outrage and surprise and said, what? Drop the con? He said,
never drop the con.
Never drop the con. Even when you're caught red-handed, especially when you're caught red-handed. Never drop the con. So when we look at the con, which in this case is not a confidence scheme, but con stands for conspiracy. This conspiracy began well before Trump came on the scene. Right. There was a well-developed, deeply embedded political spying culture that had taken place for years. I believe that it went as far, wide, and deep. You guys have heard me talk about this for a long time. Trump was just part of it. We're starting to see it come out. But what we're reluctant to focus on is the fact that everybody knew that it was a lie to start with. Everybody knew it. Mueller knew it coming in. Yeah, his chief of staff did it. And I know everybody's crying tears for this guy because he appears to not have all of his faculties. Well, whether he's goofy, suffering from dementia onset, or he's just an actor, either way, this guy was a former FBI director. He is a former U.S. attorney. He is a lot of things. I'm not sure if he was ever a judge or not.
He's dirty.
Whatever the hell this guy was when he was up there. This reminds me of a point that I wanted to discuss. As you know, I don't like to do a lot of national, but this one here is probably worth talking a little about. But the most important investigation conducted in America in the last 100 years was which one? Answer: the investigation of the assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happened, all of America wanted to know who had done it, how it happened, and whether anybody abroad had anything to do with it. It was absolutely essential that we know what, because this guy had been in Russia, Lee Harvey Oswald.
Right.
He had gone to their embassy. He had done a lot of things. And yes, unfortunately, he was a former Marine. Hell of a shot. This guy was the worst kind of fellow. But when we decided that we wanted to find that out, who do we appoint? Robert Mueller, single prosecutor? Hell no. Yeah, we got Earl Warren. We had, I think Gerald Ford was on there. Joe Ball, a very well-known trial attorney of the era from out here in Long Beach. Dulles, one of the Dulleses who had been the head of the OSS and the CIA. I mean, there was a tremendous elite group, and they got to the bottom of that, no holds barred. Everything was there. We got to the bottom of it. So what do we do now? Well, this one comes around, and the same issue is at stake, and that was whether our government had been overthrown. When Kennedy was assassinated, our government was overthrown. A sitting president, was deposed.
Yes. But
I mean,
one man,
one guy,
an entire criminal intergovernmental conspiracy.
That's
the
correct.
Justice Department of the FBI,
and they were looking at Lyndon. They say they were looking at everybody, looking at their own grandmothers. It was that darned important. So when the next time that we have a threat to our government, that our government has been undermined, threatened by a foreign power in the form of a conspiracy or collusion or whatever the hell it is they're trying to do with the presidential candidate, and then we are given to believe a sitting president of the United States, what do? They put a little committee on there, and they hand this ball to a senile old man. Well, that's what we're being told now. That he was senile. Now that guy knew then that he was senile, and yet he took upon himself the most important investigation since the Kennedy assassination. And with all of these gimmicks, all of these limitations, it's few conclusions. We are asked to accept this con. Well, They went out there, they kept up the con, and the coup against the President of the United States, the attempt to undermine, to depose, and overthrow the legitimately elected government of the United States of America is ongoing, and these people are going to continue this lie, this fraud, this hustle, this con right into the next election and to use it again. They almost stole one election in 16. They did steal another election in 18 because even then it was a toss-up as to what was really happening. There were so many Republicans, so many people in this country who were willing to believe that there must have been something to it, or all these people wouldn't be cooperating. This damn thing is an outrage.
It's deep and it's large, and that's why it's not one crazy Palestinian who's killing, Robert Kennedy, for example, or Sirhan, or one crazy killing John Kennedy. This is the entire governmental, bureaucracy.
Right.
And this is what is so horrifying.
And they're attacking us, they're attacking you, and they're attacking me. And if there's any Democrat out there or any Trump hater who is taking any solace in this, I warn you, there's nothing good that will come of this, even if you were successful in getting rid of Trump. It would be the end of this country. It would be the end of you.
Trump is us.
Yeah, end of us. This thing we call America.
They're going after America and the Constitution, right. and Trump is standing up for them. He's a hero. He's righteous. He's courageous. He's a wonderful role model for children. I think it's about time we start looking at him in a much more serious light.
Exactly. The current Donald Trump, maybe. But anyway. Hey, Brent, I've got another caller going here. I want to talk with him a little bit. It's great to hear from you. Join me next week, and we keep the love going. Okay. Next up, we have Mike from El Segundo. How are you tonight, Mike? Good to hear from you again.
Hi, Mike. Thank you. Good to hear you also, your excellent show. The Democrat Party is attacking the Constitution from all angles. They've been doing this for decades, including trying to steal elections and rejecting the results of elections they could not win or steal. As we remember, they tried to steal the 2000 election very hard when they realized how close it was in Florida that it was possible to steal it. And they flew in, I don't know, it was 100 or many dozens of lawyers to Florida who specialize in elections and to help manipulate the election outcome. But fortunately, Bush, the Republicans stood strong against that, and Donald Trump is a lot stronger than them, which is fantastic. But what you had said to me on your show in a previous call, this was a number of shows back, which is so critically important, is how the main way that the Democrats steal elections isn't even the ways we think of, where they use gerrymandering, where they do, illegal, voters, right? Illegal aliens voting, people voting multiple times because they don't want to have photo ID. As you mentioned, they start the election fraud and theft in the schools, especially the public schools, by indoctrinating and brainwashing the school children to become socialists and Marxists and to support the Democrat Party, which has been hijacked by socialists, Marxists, communists, etc. And what I'm wondering is, how do we get past the lack of transparency as to what they're teaching the kids? For example, when I go to the El Segundo Unified School District website, the district website, there's nothing up there at all about what textbooks they're using, what reading material on tablets they're using, or any of the curriculum. When I go to the individual school websites in the El Segundo Unified School District, the same thing. There's zero information about what they're teaching the children, yet they expect us to keep coughing up more and more money and our property taxes and our other taxes, to pay for everything. It's just unbelievable what's going on, that there's zero accountability and that there is zero visibility. So I was thinking of doing public records requests. I'm wondering, have you done this before? Mike. And how did you do it, or how do you recommend approaching finding out what they're actually teaching the kids at our expense?
Hey, Mike, we're going to talk about that important topic when we come back. Can you stay over past the hour, at the top of the hour?
Sure, absolutely.
Love to talk about it. Extremely important. We'll continue with Mike from El Segundo after the top of our hour. This is Mike Alexander, Radio Free Los Angeles, and we'll see you after the news. And be sure to call in, be part of our program, 866-870-5752.
Come in, Southern California. This is Radio Free Los Angeles. Do you copy? Repeat, do you copy?
Now transmitting from behind the Iron Curtain in the People's Republic of California, we bring you the voice of free men, free markets, and limited constitutional government. Welcome to citizen-sponsored Radio Free Los Angeles with President of the California Taxpayers Union, Mike Alexander, and editor of the Taxpayer Gazette, Jonathan Wilson.
And yes, we are live. Thank you, Jeff, best board man in the world, and Brooke, our reliable phone screener in there. Good to have both of you here tonight. And this is the last half hour of our favorite program here, Radio Free Los Angeles. And at the end of this half hour, we're going to have our favorite feature, which is Government Grifter of the Week Award. You're going to love these, particularly in light of other things that are going on in the city of Los Angeles. Now, if you'd like to be part of our program, you can call us here at 866-870-5752. And right now we're going to continue with Mike from El Segundo, and a former city councilman down there, as I recall.
That's right, exactly.
All right.
And
so
the problem is, even when you're elected on city council, even if you have a majority for a period of years, sometime a new city council majority can always undo a lot of the good stuff you have done. Maybe not everything, but a lot of it. And that's why it's so important that people always be vigilant all the time and not just say, we got Donald Trump elected, that's good enough, we don't have to do more. We have to keep him in office, we have to get him reelected, we have to get more people, Republicans, conservatives, libertarians, elected to Congress to give him the support he needs.
Yes.
So it gets back to the old saying, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. We cannot say, oh, we got a good person elected, we've done our job. We have to work every day of every year because the enemies of America in this country, the domestic enemies, they do work every day of every year.
They do.
Schools, teaching,
and we pay them salaries.
Fake news.
Unlike every other foreign invasion, unlike every other foreign conspiracy determined to take down our country, we pay these people. They're taxpayer-funded revolutionaries.
They use our money against us, which is another part of the problem. And as I'm sure you know very well, the schools do use, as well as local governments and state government, they do use our tax money for political campaign purposes, even though they're not supposed to be doing that.
That's right. They have an infinite number of ways to do this, and there's so much to know and discuss. That we need at least 2 or 3 hours a day and 10 programs like this, doing it 2 or 3 hours a day to get to the bottom of this corruption. But I want to go back to the very important topic that you raised at the end of the hour, which was what we've been talking about here, about what is the real electoral challenge that we face. As we discussed a few programs ago, there are many types of modern gerrymandering.
Actually, before we get to that, can we talk about how we can get some visibility into the reading list and the school curriculum, what the public schools are teaching the kids at our taxpayer expense? Because like I said, I've been unable to find any information. There's zero information about what they are teaching the kids, what they're having them read on the El Segundo Unified School District website and on this website for each individual school in the school district. There's zero visibility into what they're having them read. And for all we know, they could be indoctrinating them into being communists and to take away all our freedom for all we know.
I think they are doing that in large measure. You started talking about public records requests. I think that's a perfect place to start. And you can also, for whatever it's worth, try to meet with individual teachers. I think we know a lot about some of these textbooks that are out there that are being used in various school districts are outrageous, particularly those dealing with so-called sex ed for primary school children. I'm talking about K through third grade and whatnot, introducing these topics in a way that conflicts with the morals and the religious principles of so many parents without asking them.
And even conflicting with biological science that there's two sexes, male and female.
Correct. They're willing to defy the science in whose name they have so frequently argued over the years, because and it's ironic that in almost any other situation, when we oppose them, they try to characterize our opposition as religious as opposed to science, right? So they pretend to be the advocates of science and sober, reflective, and tough-minded scientific method. Well, then they proceed to ignore their own science. And for years they did that. They ignored the science with when life started. Now, most biologists, when I say most, I'm talking about 80 or 90%, agree that life begins at conception, but they just don't care. So now the cat's out of the bag. They were always willing to murder, and here we are. I think that we can get the word out. There are so many parents. I want to tell you, Mike, I've been meeting with a lot of parents, a lot of activists here over the last several months on school choice, and this is the issue. And in fact, I wish you would maybe drop a call. You and I and others in your community should be getting together talking about school choice. Mike, I don't think that any of these institutions can be reformed. I think we can expose them to the extent that in such a way that we can win an election. But no matter how much we expose them, these people will never change because we have no capacity to reform any institution like this from the outside. We simply have to take our money.
Vouchers, obviously, and we need competition. We need choice. The Democrats are anti-choice on everything except killing babies, preborn babies, which goes against the choice of the baby.
Right.
For the choice of the Democrats and Planned Parenthood.
That's correct.
Party and Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, and go ahead.
They're anti-choice, obviously, on education. They're what school parents can put their kids into because they tax you once to pay for the substandard and unacceptable, in many cases, public schools, and then the parents don't have money left over after paying all the taxes to put their kids in private school. They're also anti-choice on the most important right of all, the right to self-defense and to keep and bear arms for that purpose. So,
that's right.
And they're anti-choice on even plastic straws and plastic bags, and plastic spoons, forks, and knives.
That's right.
On what kind of car you drive, what kind of toilet you have, what kind of light bulb you use.
We are simply no longer a free people.
Right, and now they want to limit toilet paper for the environment, of course.
For the environment.
They want to control toilet paper.
Yeah, the children and the environment and peace and all this garbage. It's amazing, Mike. I'm going to go on to another article that you will like.
Do you have any more information on how to get into the school curriculum? Because since they're using tablets now, they may not even have textbooks as we know them. It may just be software and data.
It might be. I have a lot of information and insight into that. Why don't you, if you would, drop a call to School Choice headquarters there at 626-792-1772. I repeat, 626-792-1772. Drop a call, leave me your number, let's chat on the phone. I'll give you the some of my own insights and maybe a few names that can help you on that, because I think it's a tremendous program. Thank you, Michael. Take care. Good evening to you. All right, now, moving on here, at the end of the hour, we're going to have at the end of this half hour, we're going to have our weekly Government Grifter of the Week award. And I don't want to steal Juan Tierra's thunder here, but some of the things he's going to talk about brought up another very interesting situation. The FBI recently raided the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, and it turned out that there's a lot of problems over there having to do with corruption and whatnot, and I don't know if Councilman Huizar, Huizar, I have no idea if he's been accused of anything, but apparently he has come under some kind of suspicion. But in the meanwhile, I came across another article that I think that you will find very interesting, and that is an admission by an attorney who represents the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power that they may have overbilled $40 million for its services. And it came out of one particular instance here involving a Gorrister. And this was a fellow and his wife who started back in 2015. He and his wife, Stella, had been told that they were going to have the water cut off because they couldn't afford to pay a $52,000 water bill caused, according to the DWP, by a leaky toilet. Now, they just found this impossible, and they after going through litigation and a huge public battle, the DWP finally decided that they were wrong and blamed a faulty meter. Now, I have some personal experience. I don't live in the city of Los Angeles, but some of the estates that we manage have had very high water and power bills, even though the premises aren't occupied. Yes, there's water put double meters there. I believe there's excuse me, I didn't finish the sentence. They have double meters there because there is water for the landscaping to keep the landscaping fine. But even some of those premises that are unoccupied end up running up several $100 a month water bills, and there are no leaky toilets. They claim to have come out to have tested their meters and to have determined that they're fine. I don't believe they're fine. I think there's some big problems inside the DWP. I think that the billing practices of a lot of public utilities are suspect and borderline criminal. And in this particular case, I believe that they're quite a bit off, and nobody's facing up to it. And of course, you should know that in August of 2015, the DWP did reach a $44 million settlement in a class action lawsuit over overbilling. I think they still have problems, and it's not just a billing problem. I think it's a meter problem. I think it's a corruption problem in the city of Los Angeles and the Department of Water and Power. And, of course, after the FBI paid a visit over there with some subpoenas, Mayor Garcetti, who has been presiding over that mess, that's on him. There's a reason why that even Garcetti didn't run for president. He's the kind of guy, given all the other idiots who ran, Garcetti was a natural candidate there, but he declined to run because of these problems. And they appointed a new head over there to try to get a handle on this. You can bet that there are tremendous problems over there in that Department of Water and Power. And the whole thing, of course, what they actually pay themselves above the board is even more scandalous than the overbilling to the average consumer, because these people they hire too many of themselves, they pay themselves too much money, then they pay themselves pensions forever based upon those too high salaries. So what they steal out in the open, quite legally, is even more scandalous than anything else. So in a few minutes, my good friend Juan Tierra will call in, but there's a couple of other stories that I'm going to pick up at our next show that are very, very important. And one of them regards a lawsuit that's been filed in San Diego in order to force Republicans, the Republican Party, to permit independents or people who express NPP, no party preference. They're trying to force Republicans to let them bid on it. Let them vote for the primary candidate. Sounds like some mischief. I'm going to talk to you about that in a little bit more detail next week. Try to get your input on it. And then also there's a very important story out there, also covered by Steve Frank at California News and Political Views. There's an article in the Epoch Times, EPOCH, Epoch Times, about the chief investment officer of CalPERS, or one of them there, who was a big shot, and he apparently was working for the Chinese government for several years and just came back and is apparently in their good graces, and he oversees a tremendous amount of CalPERS investments, which includes significant investments in Chinese companies that are not only owned by the state, but are implicated in building that phony island of theirs out there in an attempt to make the South China Sea the exclusive waters of the People's Republic of China. So there's a lot to know about that there. And in the Chinese government, we all know and love people who have come here from China and have become a big part of our society. But there's a huge problem with the communist government of China and their militaristic ambitions out there. We'll talk about that next week. We're also going to go into more detail into the governor's 2019 and 20 budget on school funding and so forth, so we can understand that more. Now, right now we have I got a couple of minutes before I pick up with Juan. I want you to know that if we're going to turn this country around, we're going to have to get control of our children's minds. And the only way to do that is school choice. And I really want you to support what we're doing here and support what we're doing in this growing movement. I can't tell you how positive the input is and how this is being embraced by people from all walks of life. Armenians, Asians, people from Mexico, Mexican Americans, blacks, you name it. I don't care where they came from. The enthusiasm for school choice is incredible. It's going to take a lot of money to fight these people, and I'm going to need your help to keep this program on here. So go to schoolchoice2020.org and give me some love. Become part of the solution rather than part of the problem. All right, now is the time for our favorite feature of the week. Music Maestro, please. All right, it's time for the Government Grifter of the Week Award featuring Juan Tierra. Juan, are you there, sir?
Absolutely. I understand you're falling solo tonight without your other partner in absentia.
I am. I don't have these guys with the Hollywood voice and drama there, so you just have to settle for me here. I stole a little bit of your thunder when you mentioned DWP. I looked up something very fascinating. Well, we got a few minutes to go. Jump right in, Juan.
Okay, well, you gave me a setup there. Tonight, your audacious correspondent will bring to this program an issue which made the headlines this week, mainly the major FBI raid in civil offices, primarily those of LADWP and the city of Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
Using our sources, the LA Times or Pravda, federal agent sees records seeking evidence of bribery, extortion, mail fraud, and money laundering, ran into an overbilling scandal, which was a ratepayer suit of $67 million, which you already mentioned, actually.
Yeah.
So our nominees are three of the major players in this little drama. Sources are the LA Times, and as usual, Transparent California. Now, normally we don't use names, but tonight we'll make an exception.
Okay.
Number one, LA Mayor Eric Garcetti, who, in 2012, appointed a ratepayer advocate to, quote, shed greater light on DWP's operations and to be a financial watchdog.
How'd that work out?
Yeah, right. His salary and benefits as of 2018, $375,000.
As the mayor. Yeah.
As the mayor. Number 2, the alleged ratepayer advocate and Garcetti appointee, a man named Fred Pickle.
Pickle.
On his watch, between 2016 and 2020, he endorsed water and power rate increases totaling $1.1 billion, despite the fact the DWP has $1.6 billion in cash reserves.
Amazing.
Also, he okayed a 5-year labor contract beginning in 2017, running through 2022, would increase DWP salaries between 13 and 22%, at a cost to ratepayers of about $280 million.
Wow.
This despite the fact DWP has a $3.8 billion in unfunded pension and health care costs.
Amazing.
Now,
by the way, I think you misspoke. It's $731 million would be the increase.
That's there's two different sources there.
I got it. Okay.
It's a gray area there.
So, Pickle's salary.
He's not listed under DWP. He's not listed under the city. Only thing I found was a LA Story and Consumer Watchdog that he makes $276 a year.
Amazing. Numero tres.
DWP general manager, a man named David Wright. Top guy while this billing scandal was occurring and did nothing to prevent the DWP from transferring $1 billion between 2012 and now from the DWP to the city of Los Angeles to paper over the city's budget deficits. They make a profit, and instead of lowering our rates or giving our money back, they transfer to the city to cover up their city pensions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, never fear, Garcetti forced the general manager to resign last week. But wait, he was always going to leave on October 1st anyway.
Right.
Talk about grandstanding.
Yeah.
I mean, give me a break. I mean, the guy was leaving in a couple months anyway.
Amazing.
So he fires him. Whoop-de-doo.
And his salary and benefits in 2018?
A mere $515,000, over $500,000.
Whoa! So those are the top three. Garcetti, $375. Ratepayer advocate, $276. And DWT general manager, so-called, mismanager, $515 a year. All right. Drum roll, please. And the winner is, for the government grifter of the week of the award, is...
I'm going with Mayor Garcetti, known in some circles as Yoga Pants.
Yoga Pants.
And because he was at the top of the pyramid here, and he let it go on.
Yeah.
And this guy was, as you mentioned, this guy was running for president?
Right.
Really?
And George Will, supposedly a conservative, was speaking positively about this jerk. Can you believe it?
Well, the homeless thing shut him down, but I think this would have knocked him off his dream also.
Hey, we're going to have to get... How much time do I have left in there, Jeff? I got 1 minute left. Juan Tierra, thank you so much for being a part of this. Thank you all my calls, including our newest caller there, Nicole. It's great to hear from you. Brent and Mike, great to have you back on this evening. Please join us next week. Radio Free Los Angeles. If you want to get connected with us, go to radiofreelosangeles.net. Click donate and join in here. This is citizen-sponsored radio. We need you to continue the fight. See you next week. Over and out.